Once again, thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning for our Icon Innovative Conversation. We're so glad and so grateful that you've made the time to join us and talk about talk about our gaps in care survey results and learn a little bit more about technology and survivorship and how we can work together to improve survivorship for all cancer patients and all survivors across the nation. It is my pleasure to have all of you with us this morning, but I'd like to introduce Greg Lee, our president and CEO. He's going to greet us and share a little bit about what brings us all here today. Greg, I'm going to throw it to you.
Thank you much, Meg. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to sacrifice and contribute your time, energy, and thoughts into the things that we have going on. During our 25 years, we've been involved in helping people all over the world as they experience a cancer journey and experience different kinds of challenges throughout that journey. The cool part is to have been a part of serving literally 11 million people, reaching literally another 90 million people, and being able to help make a difference in their cancer journey, to ease the burden and give them a shoulder to lean on, a shoulder to cry on, and a support system to help make that possible. And that's all results of the effort and the sacrifice and the contributions that each of you have made to the work that we've done over 25 years. I think it's important for us to note today that we've done this by not focusing so much on the disease or the science, but focusing on the person. It's focusing on the person who has the disease and the issues and the challenges that their families and their caregivers and others go through throughout their cancer journey. I think it's also important to know that we have a historical, legacy at focusing our time and energy on the gaps that we find along that journey. We don't want to simply replicate solutions that another organization is solving or where there's 4 solutions that already exist. What we want to do is focus on the gaps in care that we all experience. It's those practical everyday problems that make cancer harder than it should be. And we want to try to be very proactive in focusing in a very laser-like manner on those kind of gaps in care. And we're going to hear more about that in a few minutes. I also think it's important for everyone to realize that we have done this and we've been successful at doing this because we listen. We listen via surveys, we listen via conversations like this to patients, to constituents, to caregivers, to friends, family, loved ones, to better understand what cancer challenges they have, because you're quite frankly the ones that have your hands on that have your heart on that are involved in a fight yourself, or a fight for a loved one, or a next door neighbor, or a friend or family member, and you have a better idea of the specific cancer challenges that you're facing. And quite frankly, those challenges vary a lot. The challenges faced by somebody in Oakland, California may be entirely different than somebody in Tampa, Florida, or Detroit, Michigan, or Austin, Texas, or New York City, or San Diego, or some small town in a remote part of Kansas or Iowa where, quite frankly, most people are treated. We have to remember that 80% of people are not treated in those major metropolitan areas. They're treated in small, local, and regional community centers around the country. But thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, sharing your ideas, contributing your time, energy, and thoughts to this process today. Let's have a great day. We're going to solve a few problems, a few problems in cancer. We're going to hopefully make some of those problems easier to deal with as we move forward. And again, we thank you for your time, energy, and contributions, and for being here today. I'm excited to participate and hear what you guys have to say and understand a little bit more about what's possible as we work together to implement solutions that will make cancer a little easier to deal with than it needs to be. With that, I'm going to stop talking, turn it back to Meg. I know she's got some information and results on our latest gaps in care survey, and I'll let her follow up with that. Thanks for the floor, Meg. Can't wait to participate and see what everybody else has to say.
Appreciate it, Greg. Thank you so much for those inspiring words to get us going this morning. We're, as Greg mentioned, we are going to be walking through the results from our gaps in care survey. So just to tell you a little bit about what this is and why we do it. Basically, as Greg said, we're here to listen. We want to make sure that we are responding. There's this huge structure of medical care in the United States that is out trying to find ways to increase the quantity of life for cancer survivors. Livestrong is focused on the quality of life. We're trying to figure out how we can help the humans who are struggling with this disease. So what we have done is we basically performed a survey, and we were lucky to have over 1,400 respondents who contributed to that survey. We had 1,434 respondents. And just to give you a sense of some of the language, for those of you who may not live in the Livestrong lingo day to day, you'll see the word survivor. And at Livestrong, from the moment of diagnosis, you are a survivor. So the space where Livestrong provides services is from that day that you become a survivor. We support survivors and their caregivers and loved ones throughout their cancer journey. So we're working in, if you look at the continuum of cancer care, our focus is from that day of diagnosis onward through the rest of that cancer survivor's life. And the reason that we wanted to look at the gaps in care with this survey was to understand along that continuum, where can we be most efficient and effective with our resources? As much as we would love to be able to go out and meet every need for every cancer survivor and all of their family members across the nation, the cost of that is prohibitive for pretty much any organization. Even if the federal budget looks like they're having trouble meeting their needs. And if you imagine all of the additional costs that they would have if they added not just medical care, but cancer, all of the additional care that wraps around nutrition, transportation, mental and physical supports that cancer survivors need, those costs get very, very large. So our goal with the Gaps in Care survey is to get a clearer sense of where we can be most strategic with our investments. So those 1,434 respondents were mostly survivors. The majority of those respondents were survivors. About 15% were receiving and completing the survey because they were a loved one of a cancer survivor. And then the remaining quarter of our respondents had another affiliation with Livestrong, whether they were participating in one of our athletic events, whether they were a client from our fertility programs. They had an array of different relationships with Livestrong. However, cancer is personal. Cancer has touched the hearts of these respondents. Sure, there are 1 out of 5 of us have a professional connection to cancer, but almost all, 99%, have a personal connection to cancer. And that's not surprising. At this point, 2 out of every 5 Americans can expect to be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. So this is, cancer is a challenge that if it has not touched your life, it will. We asked our respondents along that continuum of care that you saw in an earlier slide, where do you see, which of these stages, which of these phases of that continuum are most important to you? And as you can see, our respondents think pretty much all of those stages are important. The 2 that are less, where there is less focus, are end of life and diagnosis. For diagnosis, I'm going to refer back to my comment about the medical institutions. Medical institutions are really focused on improving our diagnostic tools. And we've been very fortunate in this country to see a lot of improvements in diagnostic tools over the past couple of decades. But the changes that our survivors have seen in the other phases of the cancer continuum haven't kept pace with those diagnostic improvements. So what I see in this chart is a gap in the ability of the cancer continuum to keep pace in the other areas with the progress that has been made in that diagnostic phase of care. Our next question was, okay, we understand that there is tremendous need for cancer survivors across the continuum of care. How can we be most helpful? How can we, where should we be targeting our time and efforts? And as you see from this chart, there were a lot of opinions along the spectrum of supportive services that would be useful, whether those are in access to high quality healthcare, whether that is education about healthcare in the form of health literacy, being able to understand all of the really complicated medical jargon that goes into cancer care, whether it's just being able to access high quality care. To Greg's point, there's a lot of care that's not going on at those few nationally recognized cancer centers that we all have heard the names of. Most care is delivered in much smaller regional centers. Economic stability is a huge crisis for many cancer survivors. A lot of having to make the decision about whether to pay for medications or rent or food or transportation. Those are really heartbreaking decisions that a lot of survivors have to make. The thing that fascinated me, and I didn't have a good way to present the full 300 pages of the report that I received from the survey results from all of our very generous respondents who gave us lots of comments. The overwhelming theme in the comments in response to this question, everything came back to financial challenges. So regardless of which area of need was being specified, the challenges came back to finance. So I'm going to go back to that pie chart for a moment. So when we were talking about education, access, and quality, there were respondents who were saying, well, I know there are programs out there, but either I can't afford them or I can't get to them. So I can't afford transportation to get to them. I know that there is high quality healthcare out there, but my insurance won't cover it. I know what I need to be doing to take care of myself, but I have to be putting in more hours at my job because I can't afford the time because I need to be spending that time working because I need the money. So it was really stunning to see that while the challenges were across this spectrum of need, the solution came back to dollars. At the end of the day, it came back to dollars, which is a really difficult thing to have to say because, again, the costs of cancer are so great that it's very difficult to try to think of ways that we can address these challenges because in the scope of this need, any amount of money kind of disappears against the scope of the need. So our big question is, in the face of limited funds, what tools do we have at our disposal? And the area we're exploring right now is technology. When we look out at how our culture has changed and how the tools at our disposal have changed over the last couple of decades, the improvements in technology really are profound. And we can see that showing up in a lot of our diagnostic tools, in a lot of our communication tools. But the question is, again, how can we be using our limited resources to address the challenges that cancer survivors are facing today and will be facing tomorrow? So down the road, the reason that we want to have these conversations and perform these surveys and have and involve all of you in this dialogue is we are trying to figure out where we can make those targeted investments that will be able to leverage our limited resources in ways that will bear fruit for as many survivors in as profound a way as possible. So we've given you some of that background information, but now we want to hear from you. We want to know what you think. And if you have any thoughts and responses to our survey, we would love to hear them. But really our focus is on understanding, either as a caregiver, as a provider, or as a survivor, what role has technology played in either your cancer journey or the cancer journeys you have supported? And how has it been helpful? How has it been challenging? What feedback can you offer us? What can you tell us about the relationship between technology and survivorship? So I will stop sharing my slides and open it up. Anyone got anything to share?
I have a couple things I would say.
Wonderful.
Before I forget the bullet points on your slide. One of the reactions to the survey results, I would just note that some of the things that people said were less important to them may still be areas with huge gaps. End-of-life care, for one, I know that's something people don't like to talk about. So it may be something people tend to avoid, even though there are things that need to be done there. Let's see, when it comes to things that are really important, technologies that have mattered to me, clearly one of the main ones is social connection, whether it was mailing lists in the early days or discussion forums or Facebook groups today or whatever it might be, just finding ways to connect with other survivors. It's the people in the end that make the difference, not the technology, but the technology is what connects us. So that's a huge one for me. And then I will be quiet and let somebody else participate.
It's always a little scary to go first. Thank you so much for jumping in, Scott. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, Scott, you hit upon something that I think is really important that we have learned in our years in the cancer space. And that is that patients who go through their treatment, their journey, their diagnosis and treatment process, and they're more socially engaged, the outcomes are better. Their mental health is better. They're able to adapt and be flexible and get over the humps that we all are going to face. And so I think that's an important element that we need to find and continue to fund ways that make it easier and better for people to engage and stay socially connected. And I'll give you a very personal example. Within the last couple of years, my 90-year-old father was going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment of multiple myeloma. And, as a person who is a practicing dentist for 70 years, he was very active in the community and saw patients and was a member of the Chamber of Commerce and other groups like that. And so he was out and about and socially engaged in a lot of ways. Well, the second he's diagnosed, first of all, his health is deteriorated. He's not leaving the house as often or as frequent. And so he literally lost connections with many of those people that he had relationships with for a long time. And as a result, from a personality standpoint, he came a little bit more introspective, a little bit quieter, and lost a part of his personality, that for 90 years really helped make him who he was. So I think your point about social engagement and finding the right tools, and in this day and age of technology, we ought to be able to find solutions that would fit different age groups, different demographic groups, different geographic groups, et cetera, to be able to keep people engaged socially so that they have those interpersonal connections that will help.
So Scott, I'm tempted to put you back on the hot seat and ask, in terms of so you mentioned message boards, things like that. Are there any things that that were particularly helpful, so in terms of the communication vector, what was it that made that, what was good or bad about that experience? What did you wish it had? What was great about it?
Let's see. So my cancer experience goes back 20 years. So there's a lot more text, less image, less video. But anything that helped you find other people who had had similar experiences, you could say, is this normal? Oh yeah, I dealt with that. Here's what helped me. That kind of stuff was invaluable. What else would I add to that? I'd like to let somebody else weigh in too, but
I'll go.
great, thank you.
So yeah, I'll save you, Scott. Yeah, so my name is Abby Westerman, and actually the organization that we founded grew out of a personal experience specifically about social support. So my daughter was 19 when she was diagnosed with leukemia and passed away at 20. And during that time, her friend group really struggled with how to engage, how to provide self-support, support, what to do, what to say, all of that. So our organization really is directly focused on that particular problem, as well as just that age group between 15 and 39 that is every part of their life is up for grabs and just trying to get independence and financial independence and all of that. So there's a lot of things that play into being diagnosed as a young adult. So a couple of things that we've done that we've found useful are really focused on helping the support system. So I look at it as a vast untapped resource that is out there to help augment the care system that exists, the caregivers that are out there, the health professionals that are in the room when the patient is isolated and nobody else is coming, right? If we can bring some of those people back into the community of support, I think there's relief and potential relief that's available. So we've created a couple of tools to start breaking down the barriers for the social support system. One of which is just kind of laying it out in fairly straightforward terms so people understand, and we kind of open the doors to those important early conversations when everybody's still engaged, wants to help, the diagnosis is fresh. Catch that energy while it still exists before everybody fades away, right? And so we're really focused on trying to tap into that part of the continuum of the journey, and then help them sustain it throughout treatment and beyond treatment. Obviously, I know this is focused on survivorship, but you've lost a lot of them within the first couple of months, right? So I think trying to capture that early helps too. We've also been working on a study really focused on barriers to social support, and that's both from the perspective of the patient and the survivor. And so if you think about the kinds of things that the the patient is expecting in terms of support and how that aligns or doesn't align with the perceptions of the support system. And I think a lot of it boils down to we get in our own way. You know, we have this idea of what support should be, and it has to be some big, fantastic, grand gesture in order to be adequate, right? When it's really, if you just ask the person that needs the support, or if you just sustain that communication, or if you lean into the awkward, that's where things really start to happen, and we get out of our own way. We also had a section in it that specifically asked about the benefits and problems with technology, because it's a double-edged sword, right? You know, social media, you get to see what everybody else is doing while you're sitting in the hospital, and it's an enabler, but it can also be overwhelming as well. And so we actually developed a tool to kind of be very clear and succinct about offering care, and actually recently launched an app in the App Store for both Google and iOS devices. But anyway, so we're still working through the data. There's a couple of papers that are coming out soon, but the interesting thing about the technology aspect is that like I say, it is this great enabler for connectivity, but sometimes from the patient side, that, you know, it's great to be connected, but then everybody feels like they can connect whenever they want, and then that becomes overwhelming as well, and they feel like they have to respond to everybody. And so how do you balance all of these aspects of staying connected and trying to communicate and being helpful and being clear about what you need and being honest and forthright with what the needs are and when you don't want support, so that the guessing game goes away and people can really be responsive, authentic to who they are and the strengths that they have. So with that, I will let others chat.
Well, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear the contrast between, I mean, to be hopelessly candid, I apologize in advance, Scott, the changes in how different generations respond to technology and the different relationship we have with it, right? Like, you know, that couple decades ago, you weren't seeing those social media posts. You weren't seeing the pictures from the beach while you were in treatment. So it was a very different experience. But Abby, you raised so many interesting points. I was very curious about your point about sort of the marathon versus a sprint, that a lot of people show up for the sprint, but a lot of people don't realize this is going to be a marathon. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what it is that you're doing to support engagement for the marathon, not just the sprint?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's really hard to have those conversations and kind of bring things up, and really help people understand that, again, like I say, we all have this big idea of what it should be, or we have no idea of what it should be, right? Or we don't know how, we don't have license to ask, or we don't have license to set boundaries for ourselves, or, you know, take care of ourselves, all those things. So the two big tools that we have right now, one is, we call it the supporter roadmap, and it's basically a 12-page magazine that is in a lot of the hospitals right now. Individuals have also requested it, but it basically, in very clear terms, just sort of lays out so that the patient doesn't have to bring it up, the supporter doesn't have to bring it up, it's out there so that you can start the conversation. And it's all the steps that are just super important to really kind of get moving, right? So it's understanding what's ahead. You know, the biggest cause of fear is usually the fear of the unknown, right? So kind of getting an understanding of what's ahead for them, understand what kind of support they want. Not everybody wants somebody to be supporting them all the time, right? So really be authentic to who they are and what they need, right? And then we talk a little bit about, you know, being clear with your communication, the fact that if you're not clear with your communication, you'll get what they think you need, right? Or you'll just, it's just a stressor, right? I mean, all of these things that cause stress in our life also cause us to pull back. And then setting up the support system relative to kind of the support needs that they have, which will change over time. And that's something we bring up too, that what they need during treatment or early in treatment may be very different than after they've finished treatment and they're back, you know, outside the hospital, and sometimes have even more needs, feel more isolated. We talk about self-care. We talk about back to the support system. Everybody thinks they have to bring a casserole, right? And instead of really understanding that their authentic strengths were the reason for their friendship to begin with. So take a look at what those are and then identify those, because it's easier to sustain support if you do something that you know how to do, as opposed to something you're expected to do that's totally uncomfortable. And so again, just bringing up these, like I say, these basic ideas to really bring down the figure of what support should be, how we should act, the fact that it's hard, let's just get real about it. It's going to be hard, but that's okay. I mean, the person's diagnosed is probably going through all this stuff for the first time too. They don't know what to do. So, it's just really about just showing up. And then just encouraging them to, be kind, forgiving, all of those things. So it's like I say, that's laying it all out. And then we have some other resources that are the worksheets and that kind of stuff to really kind of break down based on those high level things I talked about, what to think about moving forward, and really starting to build a foundation that can move forward, and it gives the whole team license to do what is authentic to them, but still helpful to the patient. And then like I say, the tool that we developed is really about communicating patient status in a very clear and simple way. It's hard to say no when somebody says, hey, I have time, I can come by, and you're just not feeling well, but you don't say no because you don't want them to never ask again, right? And a lot of stuff, it's not personable. People can take it personally. And talking about your cancer, some days you want to talk about it, other days you don't. So we have something that basically says whether or not you want to talk about the cancer. So it's the way we sort of synopsize the tool that we provide is just check the app before you come by, because it'll tell basically how they're doing, whether or not they want visitors or how they want to connect that day, how they want to communicate and what their mood is. So you can kind of align with, if they're not feeling well, you come in with more of a mood that aligns with that. But if they want to be entertained and somebody to make them laugh, then that's how you show up. And then we also have, a wish function. It's, an invite only tool, but it's, some very basic clear functions. When my daughter was sick, we actually used Caring Bridge, and none of her friends used it because it is more of a journaling, which is great. I think some people really find that to be very helpful in like reading the stories and kind of where things are, but that's where things were. And like with her friends, I think they wanted to know in the moment, I have time, I'm busy, can I come by? What should I bring with me? Or do you even want visitors? People don't call because it's like, well, I don't want to bother them. They may be, not feeling well. So it's just all these things that we just don't know, and it get in our way of just showing up. And so, like I say, those are the two big pieces that we've developed. We also have some supporter kits that we're delivering earlier or later this year during the summertime that really kind of invite that support system with a package that they don't normally get, right? The support system is just kind of there. So should I show up, or I don't know how to do this? What am I supposed to do? So again, trying to get everybody off to a good start, because I think if you do that, you stand a much better chance of sustaining. Because my daughter's personal experience was just like is always described. You get the wave at the beginning, and then it was a flat line, and she lost hope. I mean, that was basically it, over the course of time, especially with that age group, when social connections are being developed in relationships, and life is just full of fun and excitement and new things, right? And to watch it all pass by and see it happen on social media was just really difficult for her. And I know it is for so many other patients and survivors we've talked to. And so, like I said, we're just trying to fill that gap.
Abby, thank you so much for sharing so many of the stories and the things. I would encourage you in a minute to take a minute and just send a chat to everyone at your bottom of your page with links or tools like that the audience may be able to make use of. We'd love to be able to promote the work that you're doing and some of the tools and techniques that y'all have developed. It sounds like you're doing amazing work. One of the things I wanted to ask the group, from my perspective, we've heard a lot about use of technology to connect, to stay connected, more for social and interpersonal relationships and things like that. My experience was a little bit different with family and others, where the connectivity to talk to the doctor or to get routine updates or things like that was something that came into question. I can pick up a phone and I can use telemedicine and I can talk to my doctor or video call or something like that pretty easy, but it's much harder for my 91-year-old mother or 90-year-old father. And so are there things that we should be thinking about that talk about technology and connection, but it's not connection for social purposes, it's connection for medical purposes, or to get the updates they need, or to make it easier to have doctor's appointments or something like that. And so I would love to hear from others about some ideas or thoughts that they feel like would be helpful to the group.
Yeah, well, in St. Louis, the county library set up a program where they give out very simple computers that are designed that someone without great technical skills can get on the internet and use it. And they have a support staff to help people learn how to use them. If I can go further, I can speak as a retired physician, as a cancer survivor, and as a prior caregiver of a person with cancer, having been on the faculty of a major medical school. My experience was oncology is wonderful, killing cancer cells, but that's primarily where they focus, and then all the other needs are minimized. I try to set up a cancer wellness program without much success in the formal medical world. I just joined a cancer support board based in the inner city of St. Louis to help men with prostate cancer. And our goal is to set up a wellness program, and it's going to probably be a skunks work project. We're trying to piece together different support services at minimal cost in the community and just hope we can get some resources to expand as we go along. And that's what I see people here doing, each seeing a need and trying to fill a gap in the traditional medical field. You're talking about technology besides connecting with others with similar support concerns. Also as a physician, as a patient who needs ongoing care, I use a technology to listen to talks and the latest in cancer care, both in terms of actual treatment, but also now there's beginning to be the recognition of the need for optimal lifestyles. And they're beginning to go in that direction of giving more support, mindfulness, get a proper mindset, stress reduction, a proper diet, exercising, sleep, etc. And that's where I see technology can be used so wisely, because not only do I have access to people in my community, I can have access to anyone in the world through technology. And I think that's an incredible tool to be used. And I don't know, this past week, I don't know what's going to happen with ChatGPT, whether that's going to be another whole resource to be used to evaluate problems and even have potential solutions that we haven't even thought about individually. I haven't tried it yet, but it seems to be something worth exploring. So I see technology as a potential wonderful tool.
I love the idea of, you know, what you're able to do by listening to podcasts or finding other things like that. I think the challenge that we all see is just, you know, finding that in some kind of a centralized repository is kind of hard, because you end up kind of having to hunt and peck and sift and filter through. And sometimes you're not 100% sure what's good, bad, what's right, what's wrong, what's helpful, what's not. But I love your idea of literally almost having some kind of a podcast library where there's information that's available that people could listen at any time of the day or night, and they could sort through and sift through on their own to find things that are of particular interest to them. Great idea. And also, Martin, just as a personal note, thank you very much for your continued effort and hard work. It's one thing to be a practicing physician for a number of years, but it's another thing to say, okay, I'm retired, but you know what? I'm still giving back and I'm still finding a way to pay it forward. So thank you again for your efforts, just on a personal level at contributing in the community, and the area of St. Louis is better because of it. So thank you a ton for that.
I'm seeing a dovetail between the comments that Martin has made and the comment that Scott made in the chat about how do I figure out what resources to trust? You know, we live in a world where there are a whole bunch of resources out there that we can find, but how do I know which of them is one that I should listen to? And I mean, anytime that I tell people that I work at Livestrong, they're like, did you hear there's a new cancer cure and you just have to paint your walls green and now no one is ever going to have cancer again? There's always something. And so that it's true that these tools have created a lot of opportunities for connection and a lot of resources, but figuring out how to sift through and understand which of those resources we should be listening to is a tougher challenge, and one that doesn't have a solution that I've been able to figure out, at least. There are smarter people than I on this. So I'm curious, when people go out looking for resources, looking for those data sources, and I mean, candidly, even academic journals, there are some academic journals that are publishing articles with really, really questionable data. So how do we figure out when we go looking for information, what sources to trust?
Well, I have the advantage of also being a physician, so I can Google things. There's a recent study done about prostate cancer. It turns out the vast majority of what's on Google gives bad information or incomplete information, even some from major medical centers that are well respected. There can be obsolete information. I've been able to, just by trial and error, find I find reliable information. It's NIH usually has reliable information, and then I start looking at websites, and then you can find there's just maybe a handful of organizations where you find the information is accurate, and something that not only a physician can understand, but also a layperson can understand. And you know, for my world of prostate cancer, I can think of a handful that I would use, which like Prostate Cancer Foundation. There's a couple other organizations online. And there are some cancer support groups. that you have to look at who runs it, what the references they have, and who they have speaking to see who's credible and who's not. But unfortunately, I can't speak for anybody else who's not a physician who can sort out the wheat from the shaft, or what's reliable source and what's not. I don't know if we need some type of group that can pick out, probably by individual cancers or an overall cancer support group, which organizations they find reliable and which ones not, but probably just keep with the ones they find reliable. I don't know, even Livestrong might have a strong idea of go-to sites, and post those. And I expect each of these different, every cancer diagnosis seems to have their own organizations, one that seems to be reliable, and have them do the same thing.
Kind of a quick update here. Behind the scenes at Livestrong, we are working hard and diligent to update the tools and the process we use on something we call Help Starts Here, which is a tool to kind of help lead someone through a journey and identify relevant pieces and referral sources, and, for lack of a better term, just the reliable sources document you talk about there. So I would be on the lookout and just aware of things that we're going to continue to enhance and continue to change to make that tool more robust. I think the challenge for us there is that we can feel good about where we are, this morning at 11 a.m. And by 1 o'clock today, there's probably other updates and other changes and other ideas or other thoughts that need to be incorporated. And so part of our challenge is continuing to find a way to stay on top of that so that we can have things that are updated routinely and like Martin mentioned earlier, are not outdated, but they're current trends and current techniques and current benefits of things. So just stay tuned as we continue to spend more time at making our Help Starts Here tool more robust. I know for us, it starts with several handfuls of reliable sources in different areas. And you'll begin to see more and more of that apparent on some of our online tools as we talk about those. So just be on the lookout there.
Yeah, the other thing that I would add is, the interesting thing about finding information is you're at the mercy of your own, what you've searched for in the past and what the algorithm decides you get to see for the future, right? So that's a big challenge. And especially, early in the cancer diagnosis treatment process, when you don't know anything, you don't know what words to search for, you don't know where to even look, you don't know that resources even exist. I didn't even know adolescent young adult was an actual thing, with an acronym and everything else. And so a lot of times it's relying on the medical team, right? And so we were fortunate enough to have where my daughter was treated, an AYA program manager that opened the door for some resources for us. But it's like ask the right question game. If you don't know what question to ask the health professional, then maybe they won't offer it up, because they also we've had these conversations in a couple of workshops we've had where they struggle with what information to share at any point in time, because they don't want to overwhelm the patient and the patient's family with too much information, so again, the dance of, well, should I share it now or should I wait? Is this important, not important? When it's just like, just share it and we'll figure that out. Okay. But it is a challenge just being discoverable and the sea of data that is out there and the information. There's a lot of resources. So I know within the AYA community specifically, there is this overarching organization. They're actually having their first meeting in June at the Global Cancer Congress in Long Beach, but it's called the AYA Cancer Alliance. And the goal there is really to organize as a community to help the patient. So it's not patient specific in that patients join it, but it's kind of this consortium of organizations. It's the second version of Critical Mass, which some from Livestrong that have a history might remember that organization. So it's basically getting the community together, because like you said, a lot of people are treated in these remote treatment centers, not in the big medical centers. And so they probably don't even have an AYA program. They don't even have the resources. They'll have 1 or 2 patients that are adolescent, young adult. But what you want to do is provide access to the resources so they can get the training to understand how to, relate with this different age group, or what resources are out there for this age group, and financial support. All of those things that, again, there's resources out there, there's money out there to be given to people to help. But even the groups that are active in the community can't find it sometimes, right? It's only when you connect somebody with somebody that connects you to, and then finally you discover each other. So it's an interesting problem. And so, back to Martin's point about Chat GPT, that might in the future help, but there are some limits to how it provides information. And one of them is it won't tell you about other people and other things. And so some of that, it's more conversational, but there could be a door opener depending on where it goes in the future.
Wanted to add something on the Chat GPT thing, just as I was thinking about that when Martin brought it up, and all the possibilities there for understanding treatment options and clinical trials and side effects management and all of the things you could get from a conversational interface with questions about those things, and then being concerned about where ChatGPT or others get information from to help you answer that. Just I had tried, for just as an example, write me a fundraising appeal letter for Livestrong. And it looks great on the surface, but you dig in and see some of the things it's suggesting I say in my appeal letter, and it's like, help me fund cancer research. Well, no. So got to be careful what the sources are.
Yeah, one of the themes that I'm hearing across a couple of different sources is there are plenty of data out there, but the question is, how do I find the right answer to my question? And it's really hard to get the answer to my question if I don't know what I don't know. And to come back, Abby, to your point about the marathon versus the sprint, at the beginning, when survivors are newly diagnosed and they're in that sprint phase, like there's so much that needs to get done and you want so much information. There are so many questions, but that's the time when you don't know what you don't know. And it's really hard to figure out what to ask or where to look. But then by the time you get into the marathon, you've kind of had to make some of those decisions already. So I guess one of my questions is, like, are there, all of us as we make decisions and move down our life paths, there are things we wish we had known. We wish we could go back in a time machine and tell ourselves 5-10 years before. Are there any tools or resources that would be whether they're sort of technology in the sense of like something that plugs into a wall, something that's electronically based, or whether it's an organization or just a piece of information? What is it? Is there anything that you would travel back in time to tell someone the day they're diagnosed, or something that I don't know, something you wish you'd known sooner that has to do with the cancer journey?
I think what people need is have a guide, someone who knows the whole spectrum of care and has a concept of the different treatments and what a patient and their family has to go through, their whole support system, and to try to get that individual in that family unit the proper information, and also plug them into the right resources. The hard part is finding that guide.
I think maybe a next generation survivorship plan creator as well. We've had attempts at that in the past to pull all the information that you should know going forward. And then if there are ways to present that in chunks that help me find the piece that I need today, not be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, and I feel like we move in and out. We move from providing the everything, providing the encyclopedia, to providing just the snippet that you specifically asked for. And the encyclopedia is overwhelming, but just the snippet you asked for doesn't give you what you didn't know to ask about. And so that's a really difficult balance to try to strike. But that comes back to Greg's point about help starts here. Our goal is to create a tool that will balance those two things. So we'll give you the specific snippet for which you asked, but we'll also say, are you also interested in people who asked this also asked, and then we can give you some other ideas, other articles, other snippets that might be interesting. If you're at this stage in your journey, have you considered X, Y, and Z? So those mappings, those paths are a piece of the puzzle that we are currently working on, literally as we speak. We've got folks working on that, but that balance between snippet and encyclopedia is a difficult one. It's difficult to figure out. We are coming up on a quick bio break because we've had y'all here for an hour. We are so grateful that you've spent this hour with us. We're going to be coming back and we're going to have a great presentation from a wonderful organization. You want to hear it. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be inspiring. It's going to make you feel good. But also, I know I need coffee. So does anyone have any last comments on this before we take a little break for about 5-7 minutes?
Well, Meg, I was just going to say, kind of based on what you're all talking about, to me, one of the biggest challenges is trying to figure out when to get, a second or third opinion. And I think that's really tough to do when you get comfortable working with a set of providers and you don't want to upset them by going to somebody else. So maybe that's somewhat already built into your guide, but I think that's a big struggle for somebody dealing with cancer is, am I getting the best advice? At what point should I reach out to someone else to get another opinion? And, I think that's all part of the process, which can be hard to deal with.
I think everyone has to be an advocate for themselves ultimately. I can speak as a physician when someone wants a second opinion. That's what they call it, the Mayo syndrome. It does not bother me at all. 9 times out of 10, they say the same thing I already said, and my opinion gets reinforced. And 1 out of 10 times where they find something or have a new idea, I want to know about it so I can incorporate that into my practice. So I would not be afraid to get a second or even a third opinion. If your physician doesn't have enough of an ego to let someone explore various viewpoints, I think it's a question of whether you want to stay with that person to begin with. But ultimately, it's up to you to be your own advocate, to do your own research, to optimize your needs.
Great points. David, thank you so much for raising that. And Martin, I am definitely stealing Mayo syndrome. I'm going to use that one. So thank you for the phrase. Does anyone else have any other final comments on this topic before we take a 5-minute break?
Just a quick teaser. You're going to want to hear about Wonders and Worries and the work that they've done. They were an early funder that we provided some resources to. And it's one of those things that every time I think about it, I get a little tear in my eye, and I'm also proud of. You're going to want to hear Missi talk about that when we come back. So just a little teaser, come back. You're going to want to hear that, and we'll see each other in a few minutes.
I've got 10:01 right now, and we'll reconvene at 10:07. Thank you so much. See you soon. Well, welcome back. Scott, we hope your lunch is delicious. We're so glad again to have all of you joining us this morning. And this is getting to hear more about Wonders and Worries is gonna brighten up. It's a gray day here in Austin, and thinking about Wonders and Worries always makes my day brighter. So as Greg mentioned, the relationship between Livestrong and Wonders and Worries has been going on for decades, and we're lucky to have Missi with us. Missi is one of the founders of the organization, and even before she was with Wonders and Worries, was working with cancer patients, pediatric cancer patients and their families. And so she has been involved in this space has lots and lots of experience, and I'm sure all kinds of stories that would both break my heart and inspire me. And I'm so glad that she has taken the time to talk with us today, not only about sort of how technology extends what Wonders and Worries is able to do, but also just they have a really unique and special mission. And as a longtime Austinite, I have watched what Wonders and Worries has been able to do for friends of mine and their families, and it's a beautiful thing. So Missi, thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you all so much. You can hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Thanks for coming back, and thank you so much for having me. Like Meg said, I am Missi Hicks. I am one of the co-founders of Wonders and Worries. I'm a child life specialist by background, and I'm a licensed counselor by background. And yes, I've been around for a long time. Thank you, Meg. That dated me far back to my old hospital days. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you today about the way we use technology to augment what we do at Wonders and Worries in our services. But what I thought I should do first is just give you a quick baseline so you have a frame of reference of who we are and what we focus on and where we came from. So Wonders and Worries, Meredith Cooper and I are the co-founders, and we founded that in 2001 with a generous donation grant from Livestrong, as well as the Hogg Family Foundation. And they really were the two that let us begin this organization that we feel so strongly about. Both Meredith and I worked in pediatric hospitals in oncology and noticed a gap, which I was so glad earlier we talked about gaps in services, right? And there's always a gap in service regarding the children of adult patients, right? And so in 2001, we founded Wonders and Worries to provide that valuable support to hopefully fill that gap. And we're so thrilled and really proud too. I get teary as well, Greg, thinking about how we've exponentially grown over these last nearly 22 years now. So at Wonders and Worries, we provide professional support to children and teenagers through a parent's illness. That's our primary focus. And these are things that likely y'all on this call know already, but I just kind of want to, again, said a little bit, but it's clear, right? Both anecdotally and through data that when one person in the family has an illness, everyone is impacted. And kids, with all the change and the uncertainty and the developmental understanding, certainly can be traumatized by that event. But there's hope, there's support there. So we just wanted to acknowledge that when someone in the family is ill, a parent in particular, or a grandparent or another significant other, the children are impacted. And a lot of times they're the sort of forgotten people out there, right? The ones who everyone's focusing so much on that treatment piece, they're in the hospital. And then what about the kids? Asking that question, do you have children at home, right? Like that is the first way to like kind of get that information out. So I'm gonna click here. And I just put this slide up. We have in our offices, we have something called the Hope Tree, and we have children share as one of the pieces of our curriculum, which I'll talk about in just a second. And we have kids share sort of their hopes and wishes and things like that. And we know it's clear that children worry about their parents, right? As much as their parents worry about their children, whether it's said or not. Sometimes children are afraid to say it. Sometimes they don't want to upset their parents, but they worry, it's there, right? And so they need an outlet and a way to address that. So because of that, we at Wonders and Worries fundamentally believe in these things. We value empowering parents and families as they navigate a parent's illness. We understand that even though it's a challenging and can be a traumatic event for children when an adult in their life is impacted by illness, we think that they can reach their full potential despite that. And then we believe also in promoting early and age-appropriate ways to help children understand and cope with these challenges that the family's facing. Ideally, we catch them in the beginning, right? When someone first gets diagnosed, we can provide that foundational information. We believe in sort of the proactive piece. Let's get ahead of it. Let's give them some skills. Let's teach them about the illness. Let's teach them about coping skills to lay the foundation to cope through this event, but then also other events in their life, right? Like sort of build that resiliency so that they can capitalize on that later in life as well. So we also believe that through continued support and keeping kids connected through the medical experience, we can promote long-term and short-term coping. Okay, so how do our programs work? So we have a clinically validated 6-session illness education curriculum that we started way back in the day, right? In 2001, it was the first curriculum that Meredith and I wrote. We've tweaked it, of course, and changed over the years, but it's 6 sessions that really help to give an age-appropriate understanding of the illness and treatments and side effects, to facilitate communication within the family, and then help children to identify coping skills to ease all the things, the stress, the sadness, the fear, the anger that they may be experiencing throughout an illness of their family member. Excuse me. So through that illness education curriculum in our 3 regions in Texas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, we provide those direct, right? Like we kind of have kids come to the office and we provide those through either individual sessions. We do group sessions, hearing earlier about the importance of like that peer connection and finding others traveling a similar path. Same for children, you know, we want to have the opportunity for them to get with other children, parent consultations, check-in events, fun family events. When I think about our fun family events, I think about also what was mentioned earlier about maybe you don't even want to talk about cancer in that moment, but if you put people experiencing similar things in the same place, whether they talk about it or not, I feel, and many feel, it's fundamentally therapeutic as it is, right? And so that's what that piece of having fun family events is really sort of an important piece of our programming as well. The other part too, while it gives that informal support for the families, it also allows families to not have to plan something for themselves, right? You're walking through treatment, it's challenging, you're tired, but your kids want to go do something. They want to go see the bats or they want to do something. And so if somebody else plans it, it makes it a little bit more manageable. So that's sort of how our programs work in Texas, in our Texas regions. And now we also offer virtual sessions, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit when we get more to the tech piece. Are there any questions? I can't see y'all right now, but are there any questions before I keep going? I'm trying to be mindful of my time limit here, but I just want to be sure if there's anything. Okay, well, I will keep going then. So why technology, right? And I was so thrilled that y'all were having this conversation and to be able to come and talk about our technology thoughts with you as well. While we're really proud of the things that we have done and accomplished and continue to do over these last 21 years in Austin, we know that there's other people, right? There's other people out there that can benefit from our services, our resources, our tools that we built. again, back to the earlier conversation, I'm so grateful to have heard that rich conversation earlier, because talking about like, what do you trust? Who do you trust? And so what we have are these tools that we have clinically validated based on years of experience and clinical expertise, that we wanted to get into the hands of the people that can use them, that are outside of our 3 regions in Texas, right? Like there's opportunity out there. So it's allowed us to expand our reach of support to families outside of our area. Oops. The other reason for technology is we understand that people are learners, different learners, right? People take in and consume information in different ways, right? And so to offer things in a variety of ways, hopefully we'll hit something that really works for somebody. Might be multiple things, but there might be someone might want to learn more visually, like they want to see a webinar. Someone might want to listen to a podcast. And so we really want to kind of have opportunities for people to be able to get the information, a lot of times in the bite-sized amounts that they are looking for. So that is another reason why we look to expand, to use some technology to augment our services or supplement our services in some cases. We wanted to be able to provide timely access to information so that people can kind of get things. I'm going to talk about some of these technologies in a minute, but that they can get that information when they need it, whether it's middle of the night, right? And so we want to be able to have that available. And then isolation requirements. We know, right, in the oncology community, isolation and infection control and infection, issues have been there all the time. COVID, for lots of unfortunate reasons, but COVID also highlighted that for the rest of the population too, right? We've always walked it in the oncology arena, but now everybody sort of has been impacted by social isolation, being more mindful, not being around things. So it really was a necessity during COVID too, to sort of think about things differently. And so that's sort of how we switched a little bit what we were doing and how we were delivering services. And then, quite frankly, it goes down to expectations of society, right? Like earlier, as we were talking about how things have changed over the years, you'd Google something, or you'd go to a book or a library, and you'd have this like hard copy piece of it. Well, now everyone says, don't give me paper. I want to download it, or where can I find it? And I think it's just to kind of keep up with those times and the expectations of people. People want immediate gratification in many cases as well, right? It's sort of, you're used to like, oh, I'm guilty of this. I had a question in my head last night, and I was like, oh, wait, it's midnight, but I'm going to Google and find out the answer to my question. And so it's all of those things that really prompted us to focus on technology and grow our technological offerings, for better or worse. So let's talk a little bit about what they are. Excuse me, I just wanted to give, the allergies in North Carolina are a little rough right now. I just wanted to give you a little glimpse into how we've used technology and what's available. And so for our client, I just love this slide. I think it's great. I love to see our clinicians. I love to see the client families. And so for many reasons, but because of COVID, we transitioned everything during that window of time to online and virtual support services. So we do individual group. We do virtual group, and we do virtual individual sessions as well. We did it through COVID so that we could still offer that 6-session curriculum to the client families when they needed it. Because unfortunately, because COVID came around, cancer diagnosis didn't stop, right? And so we still needed to get that support out to the families that were needing it. So we now, that was our mainstay during COVID, but we kept it as well, right? Because we know that sometimes families can't get to a group, they can't get to our office. And so we do have the opportunity for virtual sessions as well. As I was mentioning earlier about the opportunity to expand, right? It's allowed us to create a national and really actually an international footprint to get the support and resources to those outside of Texas. I'll highlight these on the next several slides, but a couple of the professional resources that I don't have on their own slide that I want to just touch base on this slide are online opportunities for education, right? And we know, right, things have shifted for professional and professional education over the years, where we used to all have to sign up, you fly somewhere, you go to your CE, and you get all that taken care of. And now a lot of people have moved to on-demand training, online training. And so that's just another thing that we have sort of used to grow with the times. So at Wonders and Worries, we offer online continuing education opportunities through sort of more of a course, like a 4-hour CE course in our clinical area. So working with children impacted by adult illness and loss, like that's sort of where we keep our focus. We also offer online webinars for professionals. And then we have a registered Wonders and Worries provider program, which is a training and support program for clinical mental health people who want to support children impacted by adult illness. So we train them in our 6-session curriculum, which allows us, so that technology of training them on demand allows us to expand the reach to provide those tools and services to clinicians within communities anywhere, so that they can actually support the families in their own community. So it's sort of just broadening that reach of the support services. Another piece of technology that we love and that we are so thrilled to be able to offer is a helpline. Again, it goes, this isn't the 24-hour day one though, so it's not all night long, but we do have a helpline where our clinical staff answers that. They'll answer some questions by whoever poses it. It could be a professional, it could be a parent, and they'll answer that. We also added a email address so people can email their question or email a callback request. So that's one thing we're thrilled about being able to offer is the helpline. So
Hello, my name is Emily McDaniel, a certified.
Oh, I'm going to stop her for a second. One of my slides disappeared. Before I let Emily talk, I want to talk about an offering that we just launched like 4 weeks ago, and I'm going to spend a little more time on this. We're grateful to Livestrong for the funding to launch these mobile apps. So we just launched 2 mobile apps called Wonders and Worries to Go. One is a parent version, one is a professional version. And they're chock full of information to help families or professionals who are helping families navigate illness while parenting, right? Navigating their diagnosis, helping children understand family activities. So those are available. I'm going to go back in a minute and find my slide that had the QR codes on for y'all to download. If you want to download those, those are available on Android and on Apple. But in the meantime, I'm going to let Emily McDaniel, she's a child life specialist and a registered Wonders and Worries provider in California. She also helped us develop some of this tool. So she's going to walk you through a little bit about the tool specifically. So let me let Emily talk to you.
Certified child life specialist at the UC Davis Comprehensive Cancer Center in Sacramento, California. I partner with parents who have a cancer diagnosis to promote family coping throughout an illness. I regularly turn to the Wonders and Worries parent app as a landing pad for handouts, reviewing a variety of topics that I frequently explore with parents. The different categories provide a unique subset of information for parents at different points in their illness trajectory. A parent may first be able to explore the child development and parenting section to enhance their sense of mastery regarding ideas to support children at varying developmental levels, and also reflect on their parenting personalities. When a parent is first sharing the news of an illness, the illness communication strategy section covers many different principles to help include children in honest and developmentally appropriate ways. As children move forward with this news and adapt to having a parent with an illness, they may need support visiting the hospital or re-entering school. The Support for Children section offers much guidance related to these challenges. If an illness advances and transitions to end of life, continuing to include children and help prepare them for what to expect is important. There's a bereavement support section that reviews topics related to an advanced illness. And for collective resources and activities, There's a section with parent and family activities, as well as a family resource section to promote continued family communication and coping. In my clinical practice, the best part is that I can directly share the links for parents to download the app on their phone, or if I'm wanting to reinforce gentle guidance regarding a specific topic, I can just print a handout and review with a parent. The app is a resource I will continue to use in my practice, as parents aren't sure when they may benefit from certain information along their illness journey. And so using the app, they're able to find what they need when they need it.
Okay, so Emily shared a little bit sort of more specifically about what's in it. And like I said, I apologize. I don't know what happened to the 2 slides before this that had it written out. I'm going to go back at the end and find them for you so you can download.
I apologize for interrupting, but we will be sending a follow-up email and we'd be glad to include those, which may be an easier way for people to access those. So don't worry too much.
Okay, that sounds great. That sounds perfect. Thanks, Meg. Yeah, I just had the QR codes on there for y'all with a little bit of a listing of the topics. But Emily covered that beautifully. What I also wanted to share is we have rolled this out to our families that we work with at Wonders and Worries in Texas. And then of course it's available widely. But one of our clinicians got some feedback from one of her clients that she works with, a mom and her son. So I thought I'd share that with you as well.
Hi, my name is Taylor Stevens. This is my son, Crew. And we're just here to tell you how blessed we have been by Wonders and Worries since my diagnosis in August of 2022. When I found out that Wonders and Worries was launching an app, we were so excited because it has really allowed us to use the tools that we've been given through Wonders and Worries here at home conveniently from our phones. Some of the things that we have really appreciated from this app are the tools that it's given us to communicate in our family. We've really learned to express ourselves when we're feeling big emotions. And also just the way we speak with each other. We use open-ended questions. We sometimes like to write down how we're feeling. And it has really just made such an impact on the way we talk about cancer and treatment and all the things that go along with it. My kids have been so blessed by this program. And with the work that they've been doing, it's also allowed me to work on some things myself as their parent, as their mom, spending family time and explaining to them in a way that they can understand each step of this journey that we've been on. So we would totally recommend this app. There's things that the kids can look through that have really helped, ideas for us to express ourselves, lots of crafts, and also just as parents, how to speak with our kids about this big life hurdle that we're facing, but we have figured that we can do anything if we're in it together. So we are so thankful to be a part of Wonders and Worries, and it's something that we will carry with us for forever, right? For the rest of my life. Say thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all, I love the dynamic between the two of them in that video. And I think what Taylor highlights nicely about the app itself is that it does sort of have lots of different information that parents can use at their fingertips, same with professionals, at their fingertips when they need it. And she talks about how it helps like with their communication. So within that app tool, there's different things that you can click on, and it talks about how do you explain cancer to your child, right? So if a parent, if that is a worry in the middle of the night when they wake up after they've gotten a new diagnosis, they can't reach anyone else right at the moment, so they can look on this app. It can give them some content and some language to use in a developmentally appropriate way to help their child with that. That only builds that trust relationship. It promotes that family-child, the parent-child interaction and relationship. And then it also, when the children are maybe potentially doing sessions with us, the parents are getting some of that information too. So it all is aligned in such a beautiful way that we're using similar language, that we're valuing sort of that same piece of sharing information, honest, accurate, developmental information. And the other part that she talks about are the activities within the app, right? Because we're all about, because we want to support children and lay that foundation, but it's really a family relationship, right? Like it's a family that's where they'll be the rest of their life, and we'll always be there if they need a touchstone. But as far as the important piece is providing that family communication, promoting that and encouraging that. And so through the app, there's activities in there that families can do together that will increase that communication, all based on sort of the research we've done and also all of our clinical experience and training, so that they know that, you know, it's tried and true. We've done it. We've done it before. We give them some information on how to carry that out themselves as well. So I'm excited that, like I said, this app just launched maybe 4-5-ish weeks ago, soft launch. And so I'm excited for it to get out there and people to really utilize it and, you know, hopefully provide support in lots of places. And then I have one more video from another registered provider. She's in Iowa and she works in the AYA population there. So let me let Kathy talk to you.
Hi, my name is Kate. Hi, I'm Kathy Whiteside, and I'm a certified child life specialist. I'm one registered Wonders and Worries provider, and also the patient and family life specialist for the adolescent and young adult cancer program at the University of Iowa Holden Comprehensive Cancer Center in Iowa City. I have been using the Wonders and Worries to Go app with patients who have cancer that also have children. I used to print out resources, and now I just help them download the app, and then it's right there at their fingertips. I have also shared with my colleagues from social work and other disciplines who oftentimes ask me for advice on how to help their older patients who have a cancer diagnosis. I'm also finding that the app is really helpful for cases where we have patients who have advanced cancer, where their treatment might have changed, and the parents are then looking for new information from when they were first diagnosed. The impact of the Wonders and Worries to Go app, what I found is that it's very positive. The information from Wonders and Worries is excellent. It's written in a way that is not intimidating to our parents. And, you know, these parents are already going through an incredible amount of stress with their diagnosis, their treatment, being away from home, and really worrying about their children and how their children are coping. So anytime that we can give them a tool that is so accessible to help them with that is a really positive thing for us in helping them cope with the whole experience. The technology and app options for our patients and professionals is appealing, I think, because they can take the information in small bites. So they can look it up and find what they're looking for. Maybe they want to talk about a procedure that they're going to be having coming up, and they want to be able to explain that to their child. They can just look at that information, or they can read all of the information and then choose what they want to use. Recently, we had one of our advisory council meetings, and our patients and family members that are part of that expressed that they really want everything to be in electronic format when it comes to their healthcare. And the Wonders and Worries to Go app really fits the bill for that. So I'm really happy that it's out there. I'm going to continue to keep using it in our hospital.
Great. So as you can see, we started to roll it out. Different clinicians are going to use it in different ways. What I've heard from some clinicians is that the option to share, as you can see, I'm using my fingers here, the options to share different handouts right from the app to a family makes it really easy too. So if you're working with a family, or you're seeing something, or if you're a parent and you want to share something with your healthcare provider, you'll be able to pull it up, and send that off. So, hopefully y'all download it and share it. And if there's any feedback about it, absolutely. It's always an evolving thing, right? So if there's more feedback or things that we need to add or change our ideas, we are happy to do that. And I know I'm sort of running long on my time here, but just a couple more technology offerings, again, to sort of round out that picture that I mentioned earlier about giving people different ways to consume their information. Another thing, we launched our podcast. It's called the Wondercast. It's done by one of our child life specialists. And it really talks about parenting through illness, right? And it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts. You can download it from our website. We drop two a month. And that has been a really great offering. I know people have said they use it different ways. Like I know I listen to them when I'm taking my walks, right? So I can consume my information that way. So the podcast is another option for information. Wonder Chats for Parents. I'd mentioned earlier the webinars that we do for professionals. We are coming soon, Wonder Chats for Parents. So again, same focus area, right? Ideas and strategies to support parenting through illness. Professionally presented and facilitated. It's going to be on our Wonders and Worries YouTube channel. We're doing a soft launch, a trial one in April. And then in September, when the school year starts, we'll do once a month after that. So that'll be another offering out there. Again, different way to consume information. Lunch break, watch a webinar. And then another option that we have, this is a professional resource and tool that we, again, are grateful to Livestrong for funding some of this virtual reality option for us. But when we work with children, we are preparing them and helping them to understand on an age appropriate level. And oftentimes you need some other technology, right? You need a video, you need a picture, you need something to help solidify the picture for them in their mind, and really also help to alleviate misconceptions, right? Because if you say something to a child, they might have a misperception, right? And part of what our job is to do is to make sure that those misperceptions are addressed and that they're getting honest and accurate information. So we have worked on, these are professional resource tools, but a virtual reality and video tours to use for that preparation. We have a treatment center tour. We have a funeral home tour. And then we also are getting ready to film a hospital tour. So those will be all opportunities for clinical staff and other mental health providers to be able to use those in their work with children and families. Finally, I thought that was finally, but this is finally. And then one more technology, website resources, right? So that also rounds out a way. Here we have I have just a sort of a sample of the bite-sized information pieces that families can use as they're sort of working with their children impacted by illness. So I feel like that was a lot of information. I am going to stop sharing and just see if there was anything about that anyone had any questions about, or any other information I can provide for you.
Well, Missi, thank you so much for that. It's always, all of the information was wonderful, but I have to admit that, the mom and kid video was definitely my favorite part. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
It's I think it would get me every time I saw it. So we talked a little bit earlier about, and I liked hearing from a clinician that basically the app is a great way to find the snippet among the encyclopedia. I like that as a model. I was curious to go back to another piece of our earlier conversation on the sprint versus marathon piece, explaining to kids that this isn't like breaking a bone. This isn't something that's just going to be better in a month or two. How do you have that conversation? And are there any technology components that are part of helping young children understand that it's not like a cold, it's not like a broken arm. This is a different kind of being sick.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I feel like there's a lot of resources to help with that. And again, what families can do is pick and choose what's going to work best for them in that moment, right? So we do have like the tip sheet on how to explain cancer to your child, and it's broken up into developmental levels. So like what's important for a preschooler who is probably convinced that they caused it and they can catch it, right? You're going to address that. Those are the misperceptions you're going to need to address. Where you have the adolescent who understands it at a much different level and may say, wait, I remember my friend's dad grandfather had it, and this is what happened to him. And they can kind of make those more abstract things. So we give information so that parents can look at where their child is and share that the appropriate information. There's also books that we list that would sort of match the developmental level, so those resources that can help. And then when you talk about sort of changes in treatment, right? Because marathon sprint, right? It's sort of chronic illness, right? Like these days, it can be this chronic illness experience for families. And so, especially with children, what we always reinforce is that your child might have been 5 when you got diagnosed, right? And you gave the information based on a 5-year-old, and you keeping the door open all along the way. Well, when they're 12 and you're going for a follow-up visit, they're understanding things a lot different, right? And so that sort of importance of re-educating and re-providing information all along the way for children based on their level is so important. So we will have things in there so that they can match the developmental level where their child is at that moment. And we also have some videos online and in the app, we have information about what do you do if the plan changes, right? How do you explain it? So again, bits of information that families can go to that suit their situation versus sort of this big general information, but sort of the big everything at once. Does that make sense? I usually will say, this is a Missi soapbox, I'll give you for just half a second, is that I feel like kids are really good at self-dosing themselves, much better than adults, right, with information. And so a lot of parents will sit down and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to give them all this at once, right? And they'll get maybe like halfway in and they'll say, well, I met with the doctor and he said I have something called cancer. And the kid will be like, okay, great, I'm going to go outside. And the parents are like, wait, did they not hear me? And what they need to understand, and what we help parents to understand, is that kids, some are not, some want to hear the whole thing at once, but many are really good at self-dosing. So they know they heard you for sure, but they realize that they need to go outside, get out some energy, do something different before they can take in and process anymore, right? And so that's why we encourage frequent opportunities for communication, open door communication, because we know it doesn't happen in one sitting, right? They just like we as adults, right? You hear the word cancer at your doctor and you tune everything else out. Like that's it in that moment. And so you kind of have to dose it that way. So that's why being able to go back to information all the time, I think is super helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Scott, did you have something?
I just wanted to say that this is really excellent, Missi. My family really would have benefited. I have 4 now adult children. When I was diagnosed 20 years ago, our kids were in elementary school, so they got to watch me recover and thrive. When Judy had multiple myeloma 10 years ago, they were in high school and college and had very different needs, and they had to deal with a lot more struggle and loss with her. We weren't always sure what our kids needed and how to help them, especially when there was so much that we were dealing with as partners, not just as parents. So I just wanted to say thank you. It's encouraging, really encouraging, when we're talking so much about gaps, to see when gaps are being filled.
It's also great, we were talking about reliable, trusted sources. And this is another example of something that may have similar information to other sites, but it's clearly from a child/parent slant and viewpoint. So you have much of the same information shared with a slightly different perspective, looked at through a different set of glasses, which can really be valuable for both the parent and the child. So again, Missi, hats off, great work done. And I will tell you, it's, almost every time I talk to groups, I point back to one of our early grants funded to help get you guys kicked off and up and running. And it sure, you've made us a proud papa.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you. Yeah.
Missi, is there anything else on your to-do list that you haven't gotten to yet?
Oh boy, there is always a long to-do list, but yeah, we're working on some things. We're working on like a children's, not technology, but a children's series of books. So we're working on that. We found that in when you look for children's books related to cancer in particular, so many, and it's great, but so many were a mom, right? A mom who has cancer, a mom who has breast cancer. There's a lot of resources out there about that. So we're excited. I just earlier saw an email come through. It's out in our final review. The book we're getting ready to launch is about a dad who has cancer and his son and how they cope and walk through it together. And we're looking to sort of fill some of the gaps in children's literature that's not there, or maybe we want to frame it a little bit of a different way. The hospital tour we're getting ready to do. I think there's always one of the things that's it's on our maybe 2 back burner, but I think it'll be super important, especially when I worked in the hospital, again, way back in the day, right? Because I worked in the hospital even before Wonders and Worries. So we're talking 30 years ago or whatever. And we used to have these like board games, right? And board games that would help facilitate communication, like a therapeutic board game. A drug company had done one and it kind of went by the wayside and you can't really find them anymore. So one of the things we had an intern make sort of a prototype once for us to just use in our offices, but looking at a game, again, sort of a hard game, like a hard, concrete, tangible game to be able to facilitate expression of feelings, education, all of those therapeutic goals within that, but also understanding the world is different now too, right? So we want to do both. We want to do a digital version and we want to do like a concrete interpersonal version as well. So that's sort of one of the things lingering out there that we think is sort of a gap in therapeutic tools that will be helpful for like clinical staff to be able to use with families. But thank you for asking that. There's always a long list in the back of my mind for sure, as I'm sure all of us have.
I really appreciate that, Missy. And to Greg's point, the work that Wonders and Worries does is so inspiring. And part of the reason that we have this, that we invited Missy to come and talk with all of us today in conjunction with the Gaps in Care survey is to kind of plant the seeds of this is a way to close a gap. So Missy and Meredith saw this gap and saw this space that was not filled, that children needed appropriate tools so that they could understand what their parents were going through, and so that parents could talk with their kids in a more successful and appropriate way. And so, we're here and we're trying to figure out as Livestrong, where are those other places where we can support either, support the creation of solutions to close these kinds of gaps. So I love the fact that we're hearing a lot about AYA challenges, whether it's the patients are AYA or either, some of these parents may be in the AYA category or just leaving it, but the challenges that are affecting folks who are maybe, well, let's just say younger than I am. So how are the majority of cancer patients are not younger than I am. So are there other areas, now that we've been inspired by Missy's stories and heard a little bit about how Wonders and Worries is leveraging technology, now any brainstorms, any ideas, anything that we can think of, like, well, what if this is the no bad ideas part of the program, right? So what can we think of that we could, what can we build? What can we do? What ideas can we share of resources that are out there that I don't know about, right? Like, what is it that we can do to close these gaps, other than all of us go out and hit the Powerball and donate it all to Livestrong, and then we get to support cancer care for everyone in the world? Other than that, I've already gotten that one. So y'all come up with the rest of the ideas. Martin, it's you.
Well, I am quite impressed with your organization, what you do. Be nice for you to have a subgroup or another group that expands to different age groups, because a large number of people have cancer where their family is older than teenagers, young adults, even though the needs may be very similar, and the stress levels usually worse on the family than the patient himself, and address that. So it'd be nice to expand what you do or pick in part of it for different groups. The other thing you didn't touch on it, and it's, I know, politically very sensitive, is spirituality. And one question always comes up with cancer spirituality. When bad things happen to good people, and how do you address that? And of course, that's been something theologians have been struggling with for centuries. I don't expect you to have an answer right now, but it'd be nice. You may do that as at least informally, as having references for people to go to fill that gap. Even if you don't fill an organization, that's your role.
I think to your point, Martin, we have to continue to be on the lookout for the most comprehensive menu of solutions and alternatives, because, you know, part of our role and mission here is to try to meet patients and families where they are and provide help and assistance that they want or need. And I don't think we can be we have to be comprehensive in that approach. There are a lot of people who are interested in spiritual and holistic and wellness and fitness and all of those types of issues that you know, as I mentioned at the outset of this, you know, Livestrong is not so much about the disease, it's about the person with the disease and how do we help those people. And everybody may approach their cancer diagnosis and treatment from a different perspective. And the broader our menu selection can be to help provide the resources that people need, then the better, you know, we're able to serve that constituency. So very valid point.
So Martin, to the point of having a wide menu, what are there any resources that you can think of that would be helpful for your work, specifically for your inner city work, that you wish existed?
Well, for prostate cancer patients, there's the Prostate Cancer Foundation, which has a lot of information on optimizing lifestyle. There's other organizations that have been big, especially with COVID, on stress management, mindfulness, yoga, exercise, etc. That's not necessarily cancer driven, but more stress driven. There's other needs that be nice to be addressed. Financial considerations, you know, how do you work in a less than perfect healthcare system? Legal questions, estate planning, things like that. If I could set up a dream program that would include all of that. That would be my dream for the wellness program, but I'm still in the conceptual stage. That's what I would have, along with all the other psychological support, therapy, trainers, chaplains, dietitians, try to be much broader, and so that people could be guided along the pathway as needed. And if they only have certain specific needs, it could be also cafeteria style, where you just pick out what you need and address that. I see ideally you'd have both options. Because one of the biggest problems that you've alluded to is that people don't know what their needs are. So it's important to point out areas of need and areas of potential appropriate responses and solutions to those needs. That's what I see as a cancer support service as general, a life support system, in general.
No, you raise a great point, which is that a lot of the supports that people need when they're working on surviving cancer are not cancer unique. They are challenges that a lot of people face either, before, during, and after treatment. But the point about a needs assessment is really well taken. I wonder if one of the things we're sort of talking around is that having people, when they come into a support process, whether it's an app or the Help Starts Here tool, however it is that they're looking for support, some sort of an introductory needs assessment that would allow for the survivor or the caregiver, whoever is accessing the tool, to start from the top and start from a very broad perspective, and then work into a more granular level to get from sort of from the table of contents of the encyclopedia of support services down to whatever the particular snippets were that they needed.
And I think the needs, or at least the perception needs, going to change through the continuum as from the time of diagnosis and handling that, and the management, acute treatment or even chronic treatment, and then when you're advancing in life and near end of life, and your perspective is going to be very different. It's nice to have a needs assessment along the entire continuum so that it could be addressed.
And as you said, Meg, before, in doing that in a way that's not overwhelming, so that you don't say, oh my God, I didn't know I needed 140 things. I thought I only needed 3.
Yeah, because you're probably overwhelmed even before you start this process. Yep, exactly.
Meg, one thing I was going to say is I was really impressed with Missi's tool that she presented. And I don't come from the medical field, but my question is, when you come across really good solutions like this, how do you make it widely known that this is available out there? So I'm retired, but statewide association of foundations in Michigan. Now that wouldn't be the appropriate group because they're actually funding nonprofits that are doing the cancer work, but are there associations out there you can get in front of to let them know that, hey, here's a unique solution we've come up with that we think you ought to look at? Because it seems like that's one of your big challenges, is there's so many solutions out there, but I just wonder, like, even for Missi's, how many people know about that? And how do you get the word out? So I know that's part of the reason you're doing this call, but it's still somewhat of a limited audience. So
I completely agree, and we're really excited to get to be part of that mouthpiece and try to share the good word about all of the wonderful work that Wonders and Worries is doing. Part of the challenge is that it is such a recent launch, but I will turn it over to Missi to talk more about what they're doing to share the news of this amazing release.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, David. Thank you so much, because it is sort of the age-old problem, right? Like, you have these things developed, and then as a small nonprofit too, right? We're bigger now, but as a smaller nonprofit, getting that word out, like, how do we market it? And so that's where we're at. We rolled it out to our clinical staff. We put it out in our social communications and things like that. But we're sort of working on a marketing plan now to take those steps to the next phase. So please share it, any information widely. If you get it, push it out wherever you can. Because, I tell people, like, even if you're not working in this arena, like if you're not either a cancer survivor yourself or working in this cancer arena, someone like your person at Carpool, they may know someone who may benefit from it, right? So even just getting it out to any of your social contacts, I think, is helpful, because unfortunately, to Meg's point earlier, it's going to touch most everyone at some point, right? And so, yeah, but I think we're working on any great ideas we will certainly take about how to push it out there, but it is, we're in the marketing plan phase right now.
I would offer too, Missy, that a lot of the gain for small level of effort is some of the professional societies. So American Psychosocial Oncology Society is one. They actually have an annual conference every year. I went last week. And it's where you get a lot of foot traffic that's actually focused on addressing the kinds of needs that you're talking about. I mean, we learned about Caring Bridge from a nurse. So, and the nurse went to one of these society meetings and that's how she learned about it. So I would just recommend to research some of the professional societies that are out there that gather. There's, a nursing focused one, there's a social worker focused one, there's all these different professional societies. Obviously you can't go to all of them. But I think it's a great place to start rather than, shooting it out to the world and hoping they hear. You have a captive audience in those society meetings. And as they're kind of milling around with the professional conversations, they come by and most of them are like, wow, I didn't even know you existed. And now they do, right? So I think I would strongly encourage you to incorporate that into your planning process.
Yes, thank you. And that is a great point. We did some of that last year. We attended some of those conferences. And then for this year, because we knew the apps were rolling out, they weren't rolled out yet. But for this year, we do have sort of this circuit that we're going on where we have some booths at some of these professional conferences. And we're even hitting the school counselors, right? To the point of they hear things sometimes more than anyone else would. So as far as that, so we do have that, but I think it's a great suggestion because that's where you do get some additional traction from people talking and then they tell two friends and so on, while we're there.
Yeah,
Well,
the challenge is
oh, sorry. I was just going to say the other part of that is we also are looking at conferences where we can combine a presentation where we can present our research, our randomized clinical trial of our program. So that program piece, and then at the same time, while we're there, we can push out all like the information about all these other options, resources for more of a national, international arena.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add. So yeah, perfect. I think it really, you'd be surprised at how much traction you can get by just doing those things. The problem is sometimes the exhibit booths are beyond affordability, but yeah, just find the ones where it strikes the right balance and you'll probably have some good luck there.
This comes back a little bit to the question we had earlier about figuring out which are the good resources, right? So now we all know, now we all have one of those diamonds and we have to figure out how we're gonna share it and how we get it out into the world. So we are now our own case study. We can, so Missi, if you need more research, you could do research on how this group, write an article about how this group is able to spread the word about your amazing work on amazing app. Any other thoughts or brainstorms? Kim?
I just wanted to add that I get to talk to the cancer community on the phone, and sometimes I hear children in the background, and that may not be the reason that they're calling, right? They are laser focused on finding an oncologist or, finding funding for their prescription, but I hear the children. So, it sparks, do you have children? And they're kind of caught off guard, yes, but that's not the reason I'm calling. I don't ever want to change the subject or kind of redirect their mindset. However, I always offer can I send you Wonders and Worries information? It's short. You don't have to look at it right this moment, but maybe in a week, or 2 weeks, it's always good to just provide that information and still just have it there for when you're ready. Because that moment may not be the right moment, but you never know when it can be. So, I share it as often as I can. I don't necessarily ask everyone if they have children, but I definitely encourage, if you know that they have children, it may not be something that they're asking about, but it's definitely good, something to share just for when they are ready.
Yeah, if I could just build on that point real quick, because it reminded me. So I've had a couple of conversations with, again, some of the health professionals in the hospital system that, like I say, struggle with what to provide when and when it's too much, et cetera. But I think there's this other interesting phenomenon that happens when you think about the patient in the moment and what they're dealing with. I mean, they're just trying to get through the day. They don't even know what they need oftentimes. And so even if you offered it to them, they may not take it. And it's really, as the professionals have described to me, there's this phenomenon that after they're done with treatment and they've had a chance to let it sit and really to be able to process and look back, that's when the revelation of, wow, if only I had, or why didn't they give me, or whatever. So it's not necessarily that they didn't give it to him or offer to him, but it may be that they didn't make the connection at the time. But it is a constant challenge where the person in the bed is often just trying to get through the day. And so it's figuring out, the right time to provide when, but you don't want to throttle it because it may be that one person that you didn't offer it to was the one that could have used it and would have used it. You just never know. So it's a constant tension. I just wanted to kind of share that insight that some people have expressed to me, that it never feels like a right time. There's obviously politics in the hospital too, like, if you shared something and then something bad happened as a result of sharing that something, that now the hospital's responsible somehow. And so there's all of these different things, I think, these conversations they have in their mind about, should I or shouldn't I, right? And you went back to like the trusted resources and all of that. So I think just being aware that it's not that they don't necessarily want to share it sometimes, but they have all those conversations going on in their head as they're trying to decide whether or not to.
Let me change the trajectory a little bit here, or a different perspective. I love that we spent a good chunk of time, obviously, talking about the intersection of parents and childhood cancer and what that looks like and the help there. And I think that's extremely important. And Missi and her team do that in a remarkable way. I think of the parent in this case is a part of a broader category that I personally see is not really catered to in the way that I think it ought to be. And that is just the caregiver in general. I think there's a lot of time and energy and resources spent on the person with the disease, on the patient. But how can we help make sure that the right tools and the right information get to the caregiver, or that the caregiver has those available? Because oftentimes, to the point made by many throughout this conversation, the patient themselves is so overwhelmed with what is going on that I don't want to say they're not of much benefit or not of much good, but they're literally overwhelmed, and they're thinking about cancer and how long am I going to live and what does this all mean? And they're literally overwhelmed with emotion. Typically, the caregiver is the one who is more practical, and they're starting to think, okay, how are they going to get to the doctor? When do they need to get to the doctor? What do I need to do? Who's going to take care of the kids? What's going to happen with food? What's going to happen with making sure the yard's done or the laundry's done or whatever else is happening? And so I think it is important for us in the cancer community to also be mindful of the perspective of the caregiver and what tools and technology resources and things like that can we make available and can we work on that specifically help that caregiver do a better job. It is really hard to be a mom. It's impossible to be a mom and a caregiver and a wife and an employee and 5 other roles. And so any tools that we're able to provide that can help in that regard, I think would be extremely valuable to that caregiver group. So just like the parent and the child scenarios we've been talking about, I think the category of caregivers is another audience that we ought to be very mindful of when we're talking about tools and resources and information.
I would even go so far as to suggest that over the course of our lifetimes, many of the people on this call are going to wind up knowing families where there are children and teenagers who are going through this experience. And we can be the ones with the app. We can be the ones helping. That can be a piece of how we support those families. It doesn't, the app is available to all. It doesn't mean that you have to have a blood connection. It can be, you don't have to have a blood connection to a child to support them through a challenge like this. So I'm pretty sure that we're all allowed to download the app, even if we don't have to like provide a genetic sample showing that we have a link to a child who's going through this. So we can all be supporters and be advocates for those families as they go through this challenging time.
I think, Greg, your point though is so interesting about looking at that broader picture, right? So like, because we at Wonders and Worries, we are laser focused on the children who has a parent with cancer, or that part of it. But your point of the caregiver who has the child to worry about, their own needs to worry about, the concrete logistical needs, the needs of their partner who has the diagnosis, right? Like that person, I see like lots of bubbles around their head. The child piece, how do I parent through illness is one of them, but there's so many other bubbles, and kind of getting that other information, I think is, to me, that does seem like there's maybe a potential gap of something that kind of coalesces it all together for the caregiver in particular.
I would agree just from my own personal experience. I think being a caregiver for my daughter, who was a young adult, there was a lot of challenges from health insurance, just everything else, because she was an adult, but we were the insurance holder. But just from a social support perspective, I don't think people realize or appreciate that there are different bubbles of support that are needed. So the patient has their, circle of support, and it's just as isolating for the caregiver as it is for the patient. But like you said, we have all of those other responsibilities that don't go away. There's no forgiveness for it. You just kind of got to figure out how to make it work, right? And so there was a lot that we as caregivers, my husband and I, did not know at the time. And it was incredibly isolating. We lost a lot of money because there was no resources for a parent of a young adult. There's resources for parents of kids, there's resources of older adults, but there's like this big gap in resources available. So when we had to displace and move to where our daughter was being treated, because she was in the hospital the entire time, over a period of 3 months, just on lodging, we lost $40,000. And so it's just one of those things that I don't think people realize it. And again, that support system doesn't even know that they need to support the caregiver. They figure they got it all taken care of, and they're in the hospital and whatever. So it is a big challenge. We did feel very isolated. And it's just another layer of communicating kind of the same things, but in a different context.
A lot of that as a husband and caregiver as well, just trying to help keep track of everything, appointments and test results and medications to be taken at what times at six different hours during the day. And it's a lot.
Well, and oftentimes the pressure and the emotional toll that takes, because the caregiver oftentimes feels more responsibility as a part of the process. I know when Dad was diagnosed with cancer, I felt like, hey, he set me up for success. Now it's time for me to figure out a way to help him. And I remember just the load I felt like I was carrying, because I felt obligated to find the right solutions and to be there with the right alternatives and the right information and the right stuff, every day to make his life easier. And I think anything we can do to help lighten that load that they have in managing multiple priorities. I used the example earlier, of a mother or father of a child who has cancer, and it's difficult enough to be a parent, but to be a parent and a spouse and an employee and a member of the community and all these other things, there's just a lot entailed there. So I know from our standpoint at Livestrong, that's going to continue to be a target area for us to focus on, is how can we ensure that tools and fundings and things that we're doing are helpful to the caregiver community, who is so critical in providing the support, that patients need as they're kind of fighting through their journey.
I think it's another example where it'd be nice to have some type of guide or big brother or big sister to always be available, has a bigger picture, who can see the needs, anticipate needs, and help address those needs. We have a cancer support committee that had some benefit. They had a brochure for the caregiver, and one of them was a checklist of different practical things. You need grocery shopping, laundry, house cleaning, getting gas in the car, being with the kids to go to a ball game, and people bringing in food. They had a checklist, and one of the things they recommended was find someone you really trust who can be in charge of that checklist. When someone said, anything I can do, he said, oh yes, Tuesday I need to have dinner brought in, or if someone needs to do something, get the house cleaned. And I think there are ways and there are systems that can be used if people know to ask for them. I think one problem we have is we're afraid to ask for help, and then we're afraid to accept help when we need it. And that barrier has to be broken down.
That's a great point, Martin. And I think that to echo again what Abby said earlier about the sprint versus the marathon, sometimes people will speak up when you're early in the process and you don't really know yet what you're going to need. And by the time you figure out what that list would be, those people have kind of faded off and they're not as engaged anymore. So it can be really tough to strike that balancing act. But if there were a better slate set up earlier, maybe you can lengthen, instead of having that spike and then the flat, you can get a more even flow of support over the course of treatment. We are wrapping up this session. Is there anyone have any last thoughts before we move on to our next topic?
I just want to take a minute to thank everyone for participating. You know, at Livestrong, we have a unique mission. Most organizations out there have a declarative statement as their mission. You know, we're going to just do it, or we're going to, whatever it happens to be. I'm not going to try to go through and quote mission statements for organizations, but we realized when we were going through our process of reevaluating our goals and mission that you know, we can't make a declarative statement. But what we can do is realize that the only way we're going to know how to help people is to ask questions, and ask a bunch of questions. You know, and what is going to work for Martin and his patients is going to vary across the spectrum. And just like Melissa or Missi and her team, they ask questions of the family and the children, and it's not a one size fits all. And so at Livestrong, our goal is to try to ask what are the questions that need to be asked, and what are the questions that need to be answered for us to be able to continue to provide help where patients need them, where families need it, and when they need it. And the only way that happens in our scenario is to have people like you who are willing to sacrifice a few hours, you know, on a Wednesday in the middle of the day to help us try to address those challenges and questions. I can tell you, we're going to continue to ask those questions, and we're going to try to find alternative solutions to focus in on those gaps. But I just wanted to take a minute and tell you how appreciative we are of the information and of the sharing of the ideas and the thoughts and the sacrifice you're making to kind of help make this better. And we really do appreciate it. It helps inform what we're doing and the direction we take. And I also would be, you know, negligent if I just didn't say one more thing to Missi and her team. We appreciate the work you're doing in the parent, young adult, and adolescent space. If we could all have that kind of mission and all that kind of work and have the kind of impact you've had with reaching families and kids at a time where their worlds are turned upside down, we would all be better for it. So thanks again for everybody for sharing. It means a ton. I know Meg has a few last minute fun things she wants to cover, but I was hoping to kind of get and stick my nose in and just offer one final appreciative statement, because we're successful because of the ideas and the thoughts and the opinions and the guidance that y'all provide. Don't slow it down. Don't stop. We want to continue to hear that stuff.